we're going to be talking about, in my opinion, a corrupted individual. Hanz and I are friends, okay? We talk at this point kind of fairly regularly in like a group chat, and I've had him on the show before and I've reviewed him before. I think that he's going way too aggro on Twitter, obviously, and I think that if he's going to sell himself as this dude who's trying to be nice and fair and level and whatever, but he's going to fucking have these moments of snapping and going totally crazy on Twitter, I think he needs to rectify that, and it's not a good look. And I think every time he runs into these optical disasters, I think more and more people are thinking less and less of him, and that's something that is going to come to a head that he's going to want to confront. This Mr. Girl conversation happened with Destiny. People are suspecting the Mr. Girl person is a pedophile. They discussed pedophilic adjacent things apparently in their conversation, so that is important context to know for what remark Hanz is going to make here. So Hanz says, DGG isn't wholesale simping for Mr. Girl. They largely just appreciate him being open about his pretty awful position. So I will note here, with this whole DGG being happy that someone's open about their awful positions, you have to realize that Steven and his community have a very specific way that they like talking about and discussing ideas or arguing about ideas. They want it to be very like bit by bit, kind of question by question, logical deduction by logical deduction, whatever. They want to see that you're able to bite bullets on some of the more negative aspects of your beliefs, or that you're comfortable just taking your beliefs to their logical extent. And a lot of people aren't comfortable with doing that, or that's not really the way that they reason through the things that they talk about. One major theme on the channel that we've kind of gotten away from, and we will move more in the direction of now that I'll be doing the debate stuff, is I think, and this is the analogy I used before on the last stream, when you have an opinion, that opinion is coming out like a bullet, all right, like a projectile. And the bullet can either move subsonic, meaning it's moving slower than the speed of sound and it's got the speed of sound moving ahead of it. The sound is going quicker than the projectile, or it can move faster than the speed of sound. And that means that the projectile is moving quicker and the sound is following behind it. That sound is going to be your logical reasoning, and the projectile is going to be your opinion. I think for the most part, we have a bunch of particles going at fractions of the speed of light. Just a bunch of boneheaded opinions and thoughts and topics that our monkey brains are cooking up based on very little actual evidence, very little actual dedicated conscious thinking and whatever. And I think that when we move to create logic around those beliefs, what we're doing is we're creating logic that is following the path of the projectiles. It's not guiding the path of the projectile. It's not moving faster than the projectile. The opinion is what comes first. The logical explanations for the opinion follow in its wake. That's generally how I think this is working with people. And even when they have a debate where they are capable of reasoning their opinion as it's coming out, they have prepared that. They likely had the opinion before, formulated it, honed it in based on all the evidence and arguments that they were able to compile, and strategized a plan for communicating that opinion that they initially had because of emotion or their first thoughts or whatever. And that's how I think most people operate on most topics. Admittedly, that's how I work on most topics. I'm not educated about anything and everything. For instance, I'm looking at a Keurig machine in front of me. If you asked me how a Keurig machine worked, I would give you some bullshitted guess based on what I think is going on with it, right? I don't have a technical understanding that's coming from, and I think that's how most people operate. Now, Steven is somebody who likes to pride himself for the most part on trying to have the logic come before the point, that the logic is going to be able to indicate to us where the projectile is going to go. If we follow the logic, we know that the opinion will follow close behind. When he has conversations with people, he wants to slow down their projectile to where it is going subsonic, to where the logic and reasoning is having to come before the opinion itself. And a lot of people are uncomfortable with that, because to slow down that projectile and that knee-jerk response and have to rationalize every single part of it before it comes out is alien to them. That's not really how people think about things. And that's not really how I like to push people through things, right? There's kind of the difference in approaches, and that's why we're seeing this first sentence. That's why they largely appreciate Mr. Girl being open about his pretty awful positions. He's open to a discussion. He's having a discussion the way that DGG likes. I know people who follow only entirely optics-focused people. That's all one noun, okay? not written well. So those folks that follow those folks wouldn't understand, but honesty is a hot commodity online and most people don't got it. So he's saying that the people who only follow people who are doing these optical performances wouldn't understand that honesty is a hot commodity online, that honesty is something that's valuable that people are going to look for. I don't think that, like, this whole thing at the end, I completely disagree with. I don't think that people are just doing optics focused stuff and they're not being honest. Like, there's a lot of implications here I disagree with Hanz about, but it's all irrelevant because that is not what Celine here has chosen to focus on. So we're going to move past that. I don't want to have to get into a long thing about why I disagree with the nuance of what Hanz is saying here. So here Celine says, you got to hand it to the pedophile, at least he's honest. This is not in response to this tweet. I don't think. Because Hanz had a tweet underneath this. DGG isn't wholesale simping for Mr. Girl. They just largely appreciate him being open about his pretty awful positions, yada, yada, yada. And he's got a image link that wasn't included in the image that Himbo initially gave us. So good. Opinion poll on Mr. Girl. Since a lot of people on Twitter and Vosh's community seem to think DGG is simping for the guy. Personally, the majority of the people I've seen who complimented him only complimented him for not hiding his views. Very few, if any, said his takes are good, but let's see. I like Mr. Girl's openness about his views and willingness to buy bullets, but I think his positions and ideas are horrible. Not looking good for Celine here, right? So the picture implies what Hanz's position is, that most of the people are happy that he's willing and open about his position, but disagrees with the position and idea and finds it gross, right? And then he has this follow-up tweet right underneath it, and that's not really what I'm looking for, but okay. Anywho, that adds enough context for us. Light mode? Yes, shut the fuck up. So Celine retweets this and says, you gotta hand it to the pedophile, at least he's honest. Let's take a moment here because I don't see anybody saying this. That, I think, is not necessarily an unfair characterization of what is being said here. It doesn't quite catch that we disagree with the pedophile, but they are happy that at least he is honest, which is more or less the sentiment of what's going on here, that though I disagree with this person's positions, I'm happy about their openness and willingness to talk about it, right? So I just want to make sure that we're on the same page with that, chat. Like, I think that this is a fair wording of this. Now, I don't even think that there's the implication that Hanz is supporting a pedophile here. I don't think there's the implication that Hanz agrees with pedophilia here. There's not a lot else here than Celine just rewording what had been shown in this poll, right? I like Mr. Girl's openness and his views and willingness to buy bullets, right? But I think his position and ideas are horrible, right? So all this is communicated here. All that's there. I don't think this is going deeper than what we're about to see Hanz react to. There were other tweets lying saying Hanz was calling him a stand-up guy. Sure, but that's not what Hanz responds to, right? Hanz responds to this. So there may be other tweets. That's certainly not what Hanz chose to put in his problematic tweet that we're going to go through here. The implication is that it's a bad take, especially with her saying, what the fuck, man? And that's an opinion, right? The implication here with the what the fuck, man, is that I disagree with this take, right? Like, what the fuck? Like, you got to hand it to the pedophile, at least he's honest. Like, yeah, the sentiment is there. She disagrees with that, right? I think that's fair. She just has a different opinion than Hanz. She thinks it's fucked that people, like, believe this about the pedophile, that at least the pedophile is on it. Like, I totally get the whole sentiment here. I don't think there's a huge problem here. I don't even think that this is necessarily, like, super critical of Hanz. It's just like, wow, that's your opinion about this pedophile person? Like, you could insert pedophile for any other dislikable group of people, Nazi, whatever. Like, I can get the sentiment there. It's a sentiment that a lot of normie people have when they view these conversations, right? It's a sentiment that, like, my family echoed when they heard me talking about this, right? So this is a normal fucking take for me, and I don't think it's crazy. Maybe it's reaching, but I read it as, Lamau, look at this pedo defense. How, though? She doesn't say at any point any of that. Like, Hanz clearly took issue with the word pedophile. Okay, let's just jump into what Hanz said, because I'm not sure. Yeah. Hey, you fucking loser. Remember that time when I gave you $300 to keep your dumb ass from being homeless, and you can't give me the barest minimum charitability on Twitter? So he's saying that he's not getting the barest minimum of charitability. She quotes this as, you got to hand it to the pedophile, at least he's honest, which I already said is, I think, a fair interpretation of the poll. So I think that this is fair. She just disagrees with you, right? Like, charitability aside, she looked at what you're saying, disagrees with it, doesn't think that we should be praising pedophiles or being honest about their positions, because she has a problem with the pedophilia thing itself, right? And you can believe Mr. Girl is or isn't a pedophile, whatever. A lot of the topics that were covered were pedophilic in nature, and we're talking about pedophilic urges and things like that and attractions to children. So regardless of what you think of that, this is not a good look. So I do. You were a shit streamer, a shit friend, and one of the biggest fucking idiots on this platform. So to the people who said that Hanz is upset about the pedophile part of this, Hanz isn't be specific about anything in his response to this person. It is just a complete 0 to 100 immediate roast to this person. He calls them a fucking loser. He reminds them of the time that he donated to stop them from being homeless, says that that should guarantee him this barest minimum of charitability on Twitter, assuming that this is not reflective of the barest minimum of charitability, calls them a shit streamer, a shit friend, and one of the biggest fucking idiots on this platform, all in response to this. Hanz is not really focusing on anything that went wrong here. The only indication we have of something going wrong is that he didn't get the barest minimum of charitability, right? The pieces are left for us to figure out. Like, he's probably mad about what the fuck, man. You guys said the pedophile part, but like, this seems like a wholly unequal response to what's going on here from Celine. So Hanz is probably upset Celine included the LMFAO. It makes him feel like Celine is laughing at him instead of directly confronting him. What do you... Guys, here's going to be my perspective. You can agree with me and you can make fun of my takes on Twitter. I think that applies to anybody. Even if I donated money to something of yours, I give you money to stop you from being homeless or whatever, and then there's a clip of me on Twitter saying something stupid and you make fun of me or you make fun of my take, whatever, I'm not going to hold over your head the fact that I donated this money to you and stuff. I don't see the connection between these two things being okay for me at all. And the laughing at him instead of directly confronting him, you can choose to engage however the fuck you want. I could tweet, I could subtweet, I could do all these things. If you want to be mad about subtweeting, you can be mad about subtweeting. I don't think any of the offenses, if we assume any really at all that Celine is committing here, warrants the response that Hanz does. This is a completely optically awful response. It makes Hanz look like a fucking complete asshole as well, right? I feel like for Hanz in particular, this is really going against the character that he wants to put forward of being a very kind dude. This is happening a lot where like he's getting mad at somebody, he gets on the wrong side of somebody and then goes fucking nuclear. If this is the brand that you want to go for and you want to be this kind of person, I don't think it's a good look for you, and I would advise against it the same way I'd advise against it for Steven or anyone else, right? So this is not my cup of tea. Maybe your cup of tea, that's totally fine. Book, she's dunking on him. If you are fairly characterizing someone but dunking on them, I don't know. I'm gonna say my take, and then if you really disagree with me, I'll bring you on the Discord. Oh, we got Chud Logic. Okay, we'll bring Chud Logic in then.
Do you agree that in order to win the optics game, Hanz should become more racist?
No.
Okay. How does Destiny do it then?
Like, how does he win optics battles?
Yeah, I thought Destiny, did it by being more racist. It's not how it works.
Yeah. But he's Cuban, so he's allowed to be racist. I think Hanz doesn't have the complexion for that or the heritage.
Okay, listen. In all seriousness, I don't think. Basically, look, I agree that like Hanz was too way too spicy with what he did. Whilst I don't think it justifies it necessarily, I think I can see someone's put in your Discord a screenshot of some of the things that Celine was saying previously, which probably contextualizes why Hanz was so angry. That's the only point I wanted to make to you before you went any further. That was it. Okay,
and what channel is that in?
It was a channel you were on. Where was that? Who put that in? Was it in general? Where did you put it? Stream discussion? No. Drama? Someone just put it in there. Where the fuck is it? Speak now or forever hold your peace. I'm sorry, mate. I saw it in there.
I feel like Hanz's brain was replaced with a honey roasted ham at some point. This?
Yeah, and then there's like a picture. So like I say, I don't want to speak to Hanz too much. Like, I've been critical of some of the stuff. Like, I think he's took it up too far. But I think one persistent thing that's happened is he's been accused of having like roid rage. and I think this is a common theme that's come out of like some elements of like Vosh's community, is this idea that he's got roid rage. And to me, my perspective on it is, I can understand why Hanz would be annoyed. I think he is, you know, natural, so I think he would be annoyed by that. Again, doesn't justify the action, maybe explains it. And secondly, I think there's a frustration with inconsistency because people are willing to body shame. Basically, I'll put it really simply. If people sometimes are willing to body shame people that have got like idealized bodies or desirable bodies on the basis that they've used illicit means to get there. So if someone's skinny, it's because they're anorexic. If someone's muscly, it's because of steroids. It's essentially like the woke equivalent of saying a fat person is fat because they're greedy. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that's where that comes from. Again, I've been critical of Hanz on some of the stuff that he's done, but I just think it's worth contextualizing it with that info.
Okay. 100%. So I'll break that down point by point as a debate person would do. So all in all, you're saying that there are these other comments that Celine is making that could justify the behavior that we're seeing from Hanz.
No, not justify, contextualize it. I don't think it's justified necessarily.
Okay. Fair enough. Yeah, so it gives us context to maybe better understand why the tweet was at the level that it was at, right?
Yeah.
So, and on that other point that you made about like body shaming people who have like quote unquote like ideal body types or more socially accepted ones. Yeah, I see that happen, and I don't think that's okay. And I don't think that what Celine is doing in these tweets is okay either. And so I think this is like a separate problem that I would definitely agree is a problem from Celine, and I would condemn this for sure. And if this is impacting what Hanz did, I think Hanz definitely should have made that a lot more clear, right? Saying what he said alone, even in response to this, might have been a bit fucking much. Like, if he would have retweeted any of these and said what he did, it still would have been like, holy shit, he went nuclear, but it would be more understandable that it had happened. But you combine the fact that none of these were what he was directly putting in that tweet for context, and he said the mean shit that he said, that's a really tough combination for me to swallow. And I would assume it would be similar for you, right? Even with this context.
Yeah, like I say, I really don't think it kind of like sort of justifies it in any way. And I myself was critical of Hanz and how he took it, you know, to such a high level. But I think for me, I look at it and I think, I try and think if it was me and there was someone that was kind of sniping at me a little bit, I'd be a bit pissed off because I'm like, well, I've helped you out and they're still sniping at me. Okay, move on. And then this happens and it's like the straw that broke the camel's back, and that's why people get so angry. Do you know what I mean? So I think that without this context, it does make it seem like Hanz is irrationally getting angry about something. You know, inappropriately, I'd say this just means that Hanz is getting kind of more rationally angry about something inappropriately to a to too high level. Right? That's the way I'd put it.
Okay. That all being said, do you think it's okay to hold a charitable and I think I already know your position because I know what you think about charity. Do you think it's fair to hold a charitable donation that you made to someone over their head when they upset you? No. I actually said this earlier in my coverage of this. I said my issue is more so that it's quite specific and targeted towards the charitable donation. I think what would be better if you did want to make a comment like this would probably be to say something along the lines of, you know, I'm really disappointed that I've supported you in the past, and sadly you've now chosen to say this about me, and make it a bit vaguer. I think that would probably be a more appropriate way of getting your message out there without being super spicy. Yeah. Okay. And do you think, honestly, in your heart of hearts, that Hanz was making his tweet about the roid rage remarks and the remarks about his brain, or do you think that he wrote his tweet, as it would appear since he put the picture of the other tweet, because of what she said about the pedophile thing? Because
it's different. Sorry, go on.
Oh no, you.
All I was going to say is, like, I totally understand where you're coming from, and obviously, you know, you probably need to speak to Hanz directly to clarify. Like, I'm only guessing over what I can kind of see, you know, and it is some guesswork, but it's just that I look at it and I can understand if someone was needling me, I'd, you know, potentially react quite angrily, but it might not be clear that there's other things that have gone on that have led me to react like that. And I've had this problem before on Twitter where I've kind of gone off the handle at someone, and it's not because of that one thing that they've done. It's just that in the background they've done other things to piss me off, you know? So yeah, I mean, I think, I can't say for sure if he was thinking in his head, well, she said this and now she said all this other stuff before and now I'm really pissed off. I think it was, probably more of a knee-jerk reaction, and maybe it wasn't directly associated with those, but it contributed to his maybe a state of mind as to him deciding to do that, if you see what I mean.
Right. Because the charitability remark that he made seems directly tied to that pedophile tweet more than it would any of these other remarks, whether it's about his brain or steroids or being insane or these other things. So like, I can understand getting pissed with somebody about this stuff and then snapping at the other thing. But I do think that the tweet seems to be not about these other things that Selena said, but rather that specific tweet that he chose to include. And so,
sorry, just to say, Hanz is in chat. So I don't know if you want to get him on or not. I mean,
don't.
To put any pressure on you. Okay, fair enough. Okay. Well, look, all I'll say is the way I would put it. To me, my reading of this is that it's just the straw that broke the camel's back. That's the easiest way that I can think to put it, right? And when you're angry about something, you don't necessarily logically flick through all of the things that you're angry about to put out there. It's like the final straw, and you're just like, fuck you for this. And everything else has led up to it, And just to be clear as well, like I said, my coverage is gone now, sadly, because I got a warning for showing Brittany venting on stream. But in my coverage, my position was kind of the same in terms of like saying, yeah, this is too much. In terms of like, this is too spicy and too far. But I think just showing that contextualizes a little bit. So at least people, even if they think it was a bad action, can go, okay, well, I did agree that this was a shitty thing to do, but at least I understand where that anger came from a bit more. Yeah, that's my thoughts on it. Okay,
makes sense to me. Anything else regarding this or anything you wanted to talk about?
No, I'm interested to see your further thoughts on this. I'm not someone that sort of really simps for anyone. I am on friendly terms with Hanz, but in fact, there's been a time before where I think I've criticized him for something and he's sort of accepted it. So I think if you do want to criticize someone, my big thing, it depends what you want to do. If you just want to piss someone off, do what you want. But if you want to criticize someone and it to be heard and it to be taken on board, just be considerate, not you, but broadly, be considerate of the way you're approaching it and try and do it in a way of trying to you're trying to show them why your idea is worth listening to rather than just trying to shit on them. I think that's really important.
Yeah, of course. And I think that being said, I'll transition into going from that angle right now, and I'll talk about that.
Yeah, no worries. Okay, I'll catch you later, okay?
All right, sounds good. Thanks for hopping on.
Cheers, bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, I know you guys are freaking out because it doesn't sound good to say, I don't want to talk to Hanz. I don't want to talk to Hanz right now because I have other things I need to communicate, and I don't need Hanz here to do that. So, and I don't really have questions for Hanz regarding this as of yet. So that's why, I don't think having Hanz on is going to help communicate the ideas I'm trying to communicate at all. So let's, and we'll maybe talk to Hanz later, but just understand that's not, it doesn't help the situation. To go off of what Chud just said, so making this idea more palatable to Hanz in specific. So let me talk to Hanz almost directly here for a second. So Hanz, like I said before, if the marketing strategy is that you're a cool dude and you're going to have fine conversations with people and you're going to remain grounded and whatever, this is antithetical to that. Beyond that, I think that we're beginning to notice that a flaw that you have, and all of us streamers have our flaws, all of us have like very specific things that you could point to that are problematic. Me, fence sitting. Me, fucking giving too much charitability to people. That's something I have a problem with all the time. Not being able to rely on inference as much as other streamers do, right? And that making me miss, frequencies of conversations. For you, I'm noticing that this aggression, this anger, these kinds of negative emotions are seriously impacting the way that I'm seeing people on Twitter talk about you or Reddit talk about you and in chats talk about you, right? This is something that people are picking up on. So I think that and I know that because we've talked in private, that this is something that you are going to have to work on, is the aggression thing. The chat doesn't know that, so I'm having to bring it up here. The aggression thing is going to continue to get you in trouble because it's going to lead to optically unfortunate circumstances like this one. So reason I don't need to have Hanz on, and the reason why we're just going to look at what Chud gave us here, is because I think this is a fine defense of Hanz's actions. Hanz had all this stuff going on for this Salim person. This is likely what's impacting or pushing him to have the takes that he's having. It's what is leading to the aggression that we see on the screen. But the problem is not this like, it appears as unchecked aggression in the first tweet. That's obviously an optical problem in and of itself. But it's that the aggression with Hanz gets out of hand. I understand. I can understand getting upset at this person. I can understand getting upset that you spent $300 to get them out of homelessness, and this is the way that they fucking tweet about you. That's fucked, right? I think a more cool-headed tweet that you thought about a little bit more that responded to any of these actually would have been an optical win for you, right? And so I think catching yourself in those moments of that aggression and taking a minute to breathe and figure out what is the best optical strategy for communicating why you feel the way that you do is probably going to be the best moving forward. This was not that. That being said, though, like we kind of got into in that Chud discussion, I think the mentioning of the charity that you're giving to the person, whatever, was another misstep. Even if you would have quote tweeted one of these, talking about that $300 donation is going to leave a bad taste in people's mouth. That point in and of itself was not good. So that's a whole other problem with this, that even if this was the context, even if this was executed in the way that we said, where you had quote tweeted one of these, I don't think that part of it's working for you either. So that's another huge problem there that people are picking up on and people are commenting on, both on Twitter and on the Discord. I think that gives kind of the full picture of what I think about this and what I think the problem of it is. Now, we're going to kind of go into what people on the Discord are saying about it, or I'm going to try to here. Yeah, I think taking a good 2 or so hours off Twitter to calm down and come up with what to say is good advice, cry, punch pillows, etc. Twitter relies on outreach stuff. Yeah, I have to do that, especially with Demon Mom and other people that I have seen piss you off, Hanz, right? When Demon Mama says stupid shit about me, I have to do that. I have to take a moment, because remember about when we talked about before about that bullet, the opinion moving faster than the logic or the reasoning can follow, right? I don't want that bullet moving 18 times as fast as any kind of logic or my intellectual brain can follow. So I want to make sure that I slow that thing down before it comes out. And so, yeah, if people say things that upset you on Twitter, I often find that waiting rather than replying may even lead to you deciding that the reply isn't worth it, right? A mute or a block or whatever is worth it. Because otherwise, you attack, you shoot from the fucking hip, and then somebody attacks you for attacking, and you use another shot from the hip. You say something like, well, I'm tired of crybabies on Twitter that say shit and then get mad when I talk shit back. Because you miss the entire optical situation that's happening with other people, and it appears to them that you are out of touch and you don't see what the problem was, right? Because if in response to somebody being like, ooh, I don't know if holding the $300 donation thing above them is cool, this is like a nuclear response to this tweet that seems mundane, if rather than saying, oh, well, they said all this other stuff and it's been upsetting me for a while, this is astrology, if instead of responding to it casually and calmly, you respond with that knee jerk of like, well, cry bullies should expect that they're going to get hit back and blah, blah, blah. You miss that the person's problem is that $300 donation comment. You miss that the problem is that they don't have the context for why you're upset. You miss so much. And then people see that tweet and they have a new reason to dislike you. And then they comment on that. And then we're spiraling and spiraling, having to defend arguments and things that are divorced from the reality of why people were upset in the first place. And you're just looking increasingly bad. So I think we have like a cascading failure of like tweet, not really thinking about the things that you're tweeting, not really considering why people are mad. There is just a lack of pondering here that I think is leading to the situation that we're seeing. And so that's why I think the advice here is going to be to just calm down, take a minute, and decide what you're going to do with a clear head, right? I feel like what he said about doxing her Venmo account felt like a threat. Yeah, let's talk about that, because I just want to get a little bit of buy-in to this tweet, but there are worse tweets that Hanz did, and I think that Venmo tweet is going to be one of them. This thematic problem of the aggression unchecked is leading to tweets that are awful, and you're not thinking about why people are upset, is leading to cascading optical failures, one of which we're about to see whenever I get the link to this next tweet. Yeah, Books, but are people supposed to take their time and find all the evidence of the other? No, not at all. So here's what often happens with me is I see someone talking all this shit and whatever. Do I want to spend my time finding evidence and whatever? Like, No, maybe I choose not to engage. Maybe I choose to block and mute. Maybe I choose to just in private mention I don't get along with the Celine person for X, Y, and Z reasons, or I don't get along with the Celine person for this general reason, which if you ask me for specifics, I can provide, but because they're somebody I already dislike, I don't really want to spend time talking about them, right? This gets back to part of the theme of the channel of like, if you dislike somebody or something on the internet, you can cut them off. It's often the advice that we give to people who are struggling mentally with some of the things that people are saying, right? To just take a step back. That applies to aggression as much as it would to other sorts of emotions, right? Sometimes you might decide that it's not worth the time and energy to fight against it. Sometimes it's just worth a block, a mute, and I don't care about you anymore. It's unfortunate. I thought we were friends. I thought I helped you out, and this is how you chose to act. I had you pegged as the wrong person, whatever. Or just a vague tweet, a subtweet. It could be a million things. It doesn't have to be find all the evidence and whatever. That's a very intensive response, and you may decide once you're cooled off that that's not worth your time and energy, in which case I would say that's fine, right? But it's more so about thinking about calming down and deciding what you're going to do, because this would probably not be the decision you would land on if you thought about it for a little bit, right? Booksmarts, I think a lot of people forget that the importance of optics is that they represent the entirety of the situation for a lot of people that see the tweet such post. Yeah. Remember that some of the very early advice I gave to Steven regarding Hassan is that people don't have all the context for that Hassan relationship.
Yeah, you're rehashing them in the standard way that like PewDiePie would rehash his support or whatever, that you would fucking grill him over like, oh, I didn't know that this guy was or whatever. I just meant it as like a blah, blah, blah.
Talking about political conversations without resorting to like gamer examples, or is that the only thing that
why does it matter? I'm just drawing from something that like frat boy Hassan would understand because it's right up your fucking lane of political commentary, I guess.
You, but
you literally end a tweet. You literally end a tweet thread. By the way, with half of this shit being like not even like true. Okay, you literally end this thread with like
liberals, blah 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 blah.
I feel like on this one though, like a lot of people know of Hassan's like attacks on PewDiePie. Like that was something that almost everybody talked about. Like the whole crypto fascist thing. I think he did a video for the Young Turks on it and everything.
I didn't know that.
Okay. Maybe I'm assuming too much of the audience, but like I feel like that was something that was like pretty popular, like around both like Twitch and like
But in any case, it's an attack on his. So I didn't want to say this, but no matter what, these are all attacks on his person, right? They're not actually attacks on the argument.
I don't agree with that. If you tell me that using an insulting joke or whatever, if you're either not aware of the audience or if you don't want responsibility for that, like that's okay, then you're directly refuting an argument that you put forth earlier where PewDiePie needs to claim responsibility for jokes or people idiots.
He didn't put that forth earlier.
Not in this conversation, but it's been like a huge thing he's talked about in the past.
And therein lies the dilemma, right?
Steven's responses to him seem 0 to 100 on some shit that doesn't matter and make him look fucking unhinged, right? And we notice that with Steven and now with Hanz, this recurring kind of like negative like name that people are calling them or thing they're pointing to is that they're unhinged, that they're insane, that they're crazy, that they're the terminally online people that they accuse everyone else of being, right? Again, hurting your image, because Hanz also wants to portray himself as somebody who lives a normal life. He gets along with his family. He's healthy. He goes out and exercises all the time. He has a normal job. He feels fulfilled in life, right? This goes counter to that, and this is not helping that, right? So similar with Steven and Hassan, you have to make clear what the problems are, or make clear in your videos, like August does with callbacks to things that Vosh is not being truthful about, or what the context is of Destiny getting mad at Vosh, right? Adding those contexts in there for people is part of optics, and I definitely agree there. Hanz has strategically provided me his tweet, which summarizes everything, which I do appreciate because it's going to give me more to look through. So let's look at this. So Hanz tweets, "Would you prefer I doxed Celine's Venmo account, you idiot?" And then in a second tweet, below it, decides to add, "To be clear, I'd never do that. But if Celine wants to lie, I do have receipt." Like, okay, if we were to chill the fuck out for 10, maybe a minute, let's say a minute, we probably would have decided that these two things should have been tweeted somewhat simultaneously, I think. So probably should have thought more about how this tweet was sent out, because sending out a clarification in the second tweet, as we know, is, you know, you can point to it being there and be upset with people for not looking at the second tweet, but you decided to tweet the first tweet with a lot of characters remaining for the context you provided in this. So, you know, this is not good, right? And this docs thing is similar to the mention of the $300 thing, where it's like, this is a point that, independent of whatever the fuck Celine had said that we've looked at so far, is awful. If this tweet was sent out with a response to any of the mean things that Celine had said, it wouldn't justify the docs comment, right? This is a very serious thing, and he just puts it out there, right? So that's kind of the problem here too. And it's a problem that would be solved by thinking through things, which is the advice to Hanz, is to just take a minute to cool down, because you don't want that aggressive thing to be what people know you for. And you know that you respond aggressively to people online, and you have this Twitter thing that happens. It's happened with Dima Mama. It's happening again with Celine. I'm sure it's happened with other people that I don't follow you closely enough to know about, but this is something we want to, keep under wraps. And that's how we would do that, is just think about things more and take time to chill out. Now we're going to read your tweet because you linked it to me, and I'll be fair. VGG is trying to spread that I threatened to dox Celine using these tweets, ignoring they were in response to someone asking, why didn't I post proof of helping her monetarily? Where is that proven in here though? Like, again, do you see where we have a problem? You don't include any context to help people with this, Hanz. Whether purposefully or unintentionally, making it very, very difficult for anybody to come away with what you're trying to communicate here, right? Like, we don't know that this was in response to someone asking, why did I post proof of the monetarily thing? I don't see that anywhere in any of this. So it would have been helpful if you would have included at least one picture of somebody asking why you didn't post proof of this, and then include this in response to it so people have context. You said that they're lacking this context that I'm going to then choose not to provide in this. Bookie, let me explain. I'm not going to. Like, this is part of the problem, Hanz, is that you're not doing a good job with explaining it on Twitter. You know what, to appease the audience, because they're going to be super mad if I don't talk with you, I'll talk with you at the end. Even if you're able to explain and give me some idea of why you've done what you've done, the problem is that you didn't do a good job of executing this on Twitter. This is mostly a criticism of the way that you've executed this, not a condemnation of your sentiments or anything, right? I'm not saying that you were unjustified in being upset at Celine. I'm not even saying you're not justified in giving this idea out that, like, well, I can't provide receipts about this $300 without actually doxing Celine, because I would have to take screenshots of Venmo account. That could be communicated way fucking better. So the problem we have is in the way that you're communicating these things. It's not necessarily in like the sentiment behind it or the actual thing that's being communicated. It's in how you're doing it. So we could get on a VC call. You could explain to me what I just was barely able to understand from this tweet, but the criticism is not like that what you're doing is irrational. It's that the way that you're communicating it is done very, very poorly, right? So that's mostly what I'm getting at here. If someone says I didn't give evidence of helping and I respond and they clip my 2 responses, because you let them, you gave them the footholds to do this. You're missing the point. Like, Hanz, I just want you to know, I get what you're saying, but I want to make sure that you get what I'm saying. Your execution of this was done really, really, really poorly, because you didn't give people the understanding for this. You gave the Celine person a foothold to make you look like a fucking crazy person, because you gave them the tweet in isolation like this. You chose to send out a tweet that is worded like this. If I go to your account and I look at your Twitter feed and I only see this tweet, which is what I'm going to see because that's how you've chosen to tweet it out, that's where the criticism is, right? I'll give this 5 minutes and we'll knock this out.
Hey, buddy, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. I might have like some bad connection. I'm currently in the airport. There's some complications. I was supposed to be streaming by now, but I hear all of your critiques. I completely understand when you said like, oh, if a big, I guess like a personal issue of mine is that what's it called? Is that I normally don't respond to everything as it's happening, right? I normally kind of just sit and either take it or like just get mad about it privately until I kind of like blow up about something, which like obviously optically looks terrible because like you said, oh hey, if I had like all of the like things from Celine, maybe I wouldn't look so crazy when I said like that initial thing, which again I know you like think that's like terribly optically and it's really shitty. I'm personally still fine with saying that to somebody. I think she's a piece of shit, but like I understand that if I had provided the context, wouldn't have looked, maybe it would have looked more quote unquote justified, right? I am naturally, I think, a pretty like upbeat guy, but yeah, you're right. I do get very angry. And part of why I guess like my demeanor has changed so much over the last couple of months is I feel like I'm being, I'd say, pretty relentlessly attacked and like misaligned by a good amount of people, especially larger communities who like refuse to engage with me, right? And like, I'll be real, that's kind of like, it has darkened my demeanor in regards to how I engage with people. Mm-hmm. I'll be completely honest. Like when we had our initial chat, like right after the Demon Mama thing, that was kind of right at the start where I started getting a lot more shit. Mm-hmm. And since then, yeah, it's been a lot harder to stay positive when I'm dealing with other people. In my personal life, you know, I'm still fun. I'm still hanging out with like the gang, still going to the gym, still going out to the bars and stuff with the gang, hanging out with my family, my brothers, and all that sort of stuff. But like my charitability or kindness towards the people who are what I consider to be unkind to me has like pretty much dropped off like a cliff. And I completely acknowledge that optically that looks terrible, right? Because I'll just go nuclear at the drop of a hat, because if someone's like attacking me, I'm going to swing back. That's kind of how I was, you know, brought up. If someone comes at you, you come back at them, and you don't. And proportionate response is something I'm working on.
Yeah. Now, is this a personal? So some people have mentioned that this seems Destiny-esque in nature. Are you taking any pages out of Destiny's book and how you're responding to these attacks, or is this something you've personally come up with on your own as a strategy?
I know it looks like I'm taking a page out of his book, but I really just kind of decided I'm just going to stop being nice to these people. Like that was kind of it. Like, oh, like they're saying like terrible things about me. I don't care. Any like bad things I know about you, I'm going to throw that out there. Like, I don't think it was me being like, oh, it's time for my Destiny, like, you know, like lefty arc. But I've been in like conversations and arguments with people recently that I think that some of these people, like their positions are just insane, and I treat them like with, you know, I would say like what's tantamount to contempt, and obviously that makes certain communities that like me a lot less. And certain figures in communities have like, you know, actively pushed to like try and like demonize me, and whether it's calling me like, you know, like unhinged or I have VDS or whatever, like, and I get that. And I personally, you know, I could have taken it on the chin, right? I could have been like, oh guys, like that's not very nice of you, but I didn't do that. I was like, all right, fuck it. Like these people clearly don't seem to have any interest in treating me with good faith. They don't have any interest with treating me like with any level of charitability or kindness. And I was just like, all right, these people aren't worthy of it in response. And I still think I take these people's arguments at their face value, but in like to separate me from them. But I would say that personally, no, I consider most of them just like terrible people and, you know, abject human garbage.
Okay. So if the main criticism of you is being unhinged and stuff, you see how you're feeding into that with the nuclear responses, right? Like,
absolutely. Okay. And I don't have a good answer for that beyond, I'm not really sure how else to respond to it, aside from like just, I think what I'm going to try and do, and you can hold me to this in 2020, we can maybe reconvene in a month, but I'm just going to start blocking people.
Okay. Because yeah, that's definitely one of the better ones. I think that the best thing, because it'll allow you to address it, not just ignore it, is if you were able to really calm yourself down and calmly explain what the problems with some of these things are. But if you know in your heart of hearts that you're going to snap, probably not the best. But I think we both understand that. But I think yeah, the ultimately best thing to do would be if you could chill out, and then you have like a chill stream where you're like, all right, so I have a few things I want to go through. I have a few things that people are saying. I just want to respond to them really briefly. These people are blocked. I don't intend on pursuing this conversation any further. I'm going to explain to you my justification for that and whatever, and then we're done with it. But second to that would probably be just the blocking, the muting, and the moving on. But do you worry that when you get in debates and stuff like that, or live performances, that you're not going to be able to moderate this behavior and that you're going to snap in real time? Or are all of these situations?
No, that in no way bothers me. I'm normally a lot better when I'm live. I'll be honest. I'm normally more frustrated when like I feel like I'm being attacked and I can't respond. Like I'll say something that like he's gonna probably laugh at this, but like something that was like really frustrating is like when Vosh like spent like days like talking shit about me and he refused to debate me. I really felt like that was frustrating because I feel like I don't like it when people talk shit and then refuse to have a conversation with me. I really don't like that, and I don't want to say I want to maybe open it up to somebody if I disagree with them and say, and then like I'll respond and then give them an opportunity to like to talk. But after that, I'll be done with it, as opposed to just saying like, oh, I'm going to block you and then respond, because I personally don't feel like that's fair to people. And I'm trying to be like fair to people, right? Like just because I think someone had a terrible take, I mean, I probably should bring them on like to talk about it, right? And obviously that doesn't mean I'm going to take like every single debate. You know, I've had like fucking 6 xenogender conversations at this point. I'm kind of tapped out with that sort of shit. But like, if it's a specific like topic that I want to talk to, maybe I'll talk to a couple people, right?
Okay, I guess the maybe a bit of an inconsistency that I'm seeing there is like, so you're saying the fair thing to do would be to talk with the people, and you feel like by blocking them, you're doing something that would be unfair. But as of right now, you didn't retweet that asking for a conversation. You retweeted that going nuclear, which I wouldn't consider to be a fair thing, right?
Right, which is what this is a plan for the future. I'm not saying I'm doing it right now, because obviously I'm not. I'm not like, do you want to talk, buddy? I might just start doing that. I'll just quote tweets like, hey, do you want to have a conversation? Like that kind of thing.
And then one other point is the overlap between the people that talk all this mad shit and the people who are willing to have a down-to-earth, fair conversation with you is probably going to be small. So I feel like the expectation that the people who choose to talk shit in this way on Twitter, that expectation that you guys should have a conversation, I think is not going to be, I don't think it's going to be realized very often.
I have no expectation that these like people are willing to have any good like faith conversation.
Okay.
But I want to extend it specifically because again, I feel like that's unfair, right? It's like if I saw like a person who I thought was like being really stupid, and I just like say like, especially like if we're talking about responsible platforming, and I find like, you know, this tiny like maybe like 1 viewer streamer, and I quote tweet them and say you're a fucking idiot, and I block them and do like a stream like saying why they're stupid. I feel without having them on, that feels extremely unfair to me.
Yeah. Although, would you think it's unfair to do the block without the tweeting or the talking about it and just have it be like a silent block? Is that also unfair in your opinion?
No. I would say that's fine. But if I think it's like it has to be an either or thing. If I do the quote tweet, I have to be willing to have a conversation. And if I don't, and I just do the block, then we're just done. I think those are two fair things. I think it's like the quote tweet behind the block, and then like maybe like a stream dunking on them, that feels like unfair to people, and I really don't want to. I don't want to do that, and I have had like good, I would say like good faith criticism from people from like say Vosh's community who I've talked to, who are now like friendly inside my community, who I think are willing to engage with me, and I don't want to discount the entirety of a community, even though I've been pretty hyperbolic talking about specific communities recently, but I don't want to discount every single community just because like either their streamer's like an asshole or like the majority of them are an asshole, right? Yeah. I don't want to do that for people. So, but I think you're right that if I think as long as I'm clear about that policy and make sure I do the differentiation, then I'm fine with that, because I feel like that's more consistent than doing. I don't want to do the quote tweet behind the block thing. That just feels super shitty.
Yeah, or the writing off the whole community thing. But I feel like these are things that you're doing right now. So they're definitely like, there's an ideal here that I know that you want to achieve in the next year. And I do hope that you do it. And if it happens again, then of course I'll cover it and I'll say the same thing. And if you want to come on, I'll repeat myself to you. And I'll repeat what you said now to you. But I think at least recognizing that there is an incongruence between what you want to be doing and how you want to be responding to things and how you're responding to them now is worth mentioning, because it also may help you understand why somebody like Vosh behaves the way he does, where he's going to say all this shit, not invite you on and whatever, because, you know, these behaviors are kind of similar and you recognize they're bad, but you're engaging them as well. But by engaging with them, maybe you can understand where other people are coming from. Other people get frustrated. They don't necessarily feel the need to invite people on or treat them fairly or whatever, and they've demonized you, and then they respond how they respond. But being the bigger person is going to be hard moving forward.
I think I understand, and I saw someone in chat, and I'm not like going to try and pick a fight with a chatter, but I actually do want to. I am not just trying to present myself as like open to other people's opinions. I actually do want to hear opinions. It's just like I remember I didn't respond to this. You should be proud of me. I didn't make an angry tweet about this, but somebody responded like, "We need to focus on their arguments," and I was like, if someone's argument's just calling me like, you know, a coked out roid raging monster, like what argument am I supposed to be responding to? You know, should I send them like some blood work? Like,
well,
like
exactly.
what am I supposed to do?
With something like that's why I'm like a bit personally iffy on the solution being to have a conversation with these people, or the expectation of good faith being that you need to have a conversation with these people. Because I think depending on the criticism or the topic, it's not worthy of a conversation. If the topic is about whether or not you're a roided out crazy monkey person who goes crazy on Twitter, like, do you really want to have a discussion about that? Like, when that's the level of argument that people are making, like, perhaps not. Perhaps the solution or the expectation there is not that you should have a conversation with them or whatever. Because that's just people shouting crazy shit.
but I think that would be the decision of me just being like, I'm just gonna block this kind of person, right? Like, hey, if you make a comment, if you respond to me saying, oh, you're crazy, or oh, you're roided out, just block that person and like, you know, try and never speak to them again, right? Like that's kind of like the level. If someone says, oh, hey, like I dislike your idea here, like credit someone in your chat. His name's like ISO7. I think he wants to talk to me later tonight. Let's see if I can ever get home from this fucking airport. And let's see if I can stream tonight. But I appreciate people like him, like, oh, like I have issues like with this specific behavior, and I think you've given me that criticism. I think Chud's given me that criticism. I'm like, oh, hey, like we can understand why you're doing this, and like where it's like it's like the idea of like explaining but not justifying, right? Because I think it's personally justified. Like personally, like I said, maybe it's just like way I was like, you know, I was raised or like where I'm coming from, but like, you know, if someone comes at you, like you tear their eyes out. But it's like, but I understand how, hey, to an outside observer, that looks pretty unhinged, right?
Right.
So, because most of the time, like if someone bothers you, you know, you kick some ass and then like it's over, right? You don't really, it's not like, oh, hey, this person like was super mean to me online, and now like the entire community just talk about it endlessly. So I understand.
Yeah, and I think by living like the opposite of what people are accusing you of is the best way that you can combat it as well. Like being super duper chill in your next stream, if you even choose to talk about any of this stuff, and covering it that way makes you look a lot better. Like when Demon Mama says some awful shit about me, I often find that the best way of countering that is to like chill the fuck out, prep some points on how I'm going to address that, and then just try to look as sane as possible in my response to it and as fair as possible in my response to it. And then people can look at that contrast and make their decision. And if they still choose to side with her after that, then it's like, well, it's whatever. I'm not sure I was going to be able to reach you then, because the alternative would have been going nuclear, which would have convinced even fewer people, right?
That's fair.
Okay.
That's fair. Because I thought I did that reasonably. Obviously, I was still a little bit like angry. But I thought I did that reasonably well. Like when I had that like fight with Vosh a couple weeks ago, where like he accused me of being like shitty person. I literally like pulled up all of his old VODs, watched them like on stream, said these are like where you're agreeing with me in terms of takes, and like, dude, like can we have a conversation about this? And like he said no, which I feel like is pretty shitty. But I think like maybe having that long term might be more useful. Maybe.
Oh no, I think we might have lost Hans here. If I'm being honest with you guys, I think at this point we kind of get where we're going. I think we're circling the drain on this, so I'm not as feels bad man about this disconnect as I was the other one, because I feel like at this point we're kind of looping on the same stuff. Okay. We are all done with the Hans stuff. We're putting it behind us. Again, you can think he's justified. You can think he's unjustified. I don't really care about that, because the main point is the advice and the critique. The critique is that Hans is not doing a very good job of communicating to us what's going on, the extent of it, and he's coming off really awfully optically and not understanding other people who are bringing criticisms to him and not addressing them properly. Solution, the advice, is to really calm down, reflect, realize that this is a problem, and then moving forward, maybe just, realize that the things are going to blow up. Booksmart's out here silencing dissenters.